Thank you. So it was a long time ago, over 2,000 years ago, when there was a man who lived at the edge of the village, whose name was Honi Ha-M'aggel. Honi the Circle Maker. Now there's a lot of stories about Honi, and the one I want to tell you about tonight is the time that he almost got kicked out of the village for the way that he spoke and prayed to the divine. You see, back then there was a great drought that was going on. A great drought. And everything was dry. The rivers and streams had dried up. The wells had completely dried up. There was no water anywhere. And the people were thirsty. And the animals were thirsty. And even the land herself was thirsty. And the people didn't know what to do. They tried praying. That didn't help. They tried repenting. That didn't help. They tried this. They tried that. But nothing they did seemed to help. And so the elders of the village all got together. And they held council. And they started talking amongst themselves. And they decided that it was time to call for Honi and see if Honi could help. And so they sent the messengers to the edge of the village. And the messengers went and they pleaded their case with Honi. And Honi listened, nodding. And after the messengers were done, Honi said, okay, I will help. Here's what I need you to do. Go back to the people and tell them to go out into the fields, get their clay ovens that they use for the paschal sacrifice. Bring them indoors so they don't melt in the rain. And they did that, and Honi made his way down to the center of the village. And he was in the center of the village, and the people all gathered around. They all gathered. Everyone in the village came out, and they gathered around. This was their last hope. They didn't know what to do after this. And Honi closed his eyes, and he began to pray and pray and pray. And nothing happened. And the people started to get a little bit anxious, a little bit disappointed. But Honi, all he did was he took his staff, he stuck it into that dry, dusty earth, and he began to form a circle all the way around him. And some say that he was muttering a secret prayer while he was doing so. And after that circle was complete, he said, Hashem, Hashem, I swear by your holy name, that I will not leave this circle until you have mercy on your children and bring some rain. And at that moment, a light drizzle began to fall from the sky. And the people started dancing and singing. They were ecstatic. This was the first rain they had seen in a long time. But Honi did not leave the circle. Instead, he took his staff, stomped it on the ground, and he said, this is not what I asked for. I do not ask for this little gentle rain that won't fill the wells. No, we need a good, strong rain, an abundant rain. That's what we need. And at that moment, the sky cracked open and rain began to fall like no rain that people had ever seen in their lives. It was a fierce rain. They say that the drops were as big as a person's head. And the people had to run for cover and hide because it hurt so much. And it started destroying things. And Honi took his staff once more, slammed it into the ground, and said, this is not what I asked for. I asked for a loving rain, a compassionate rain, an abundant, peaceful, nourishing rain. And the rain did in fact change. And it began to fall steady. And the circle that Honi was standing in washed away. And the people once again started to dance and sing and say, Honi, 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 Toda Rabbah, Toda Rabbah, thank you so much. Honi, we dub you, Honi Ha-M'aggel, Honi the Circle Maker. Thank you. Well, almost everyone was dancing and celebrating. There was one who was kind of off to the side. He was rubbing his chin. Had a little bit of an unsure look on his face. This was the chief of the village. And he called his counselors together and they talked a little bit. And after the people had dispersed, the chief went up to Honi and said, were you anyone else? Were you not Honi, but anybody else? You would be kicked out of this village. For nobody speaks to Hashem the way you spoke to Hashem. No one demands the way you demanded. You sounded like a child. And Honi just looked at him with a smile and said, and yet God listened, and turned and walked away. Now, a little bit of time had passed, maybe a month, maybe 6 weeks, and Honi was up on the mountain praying and doing what he does, his retreat. And some messengers came to him, and they said, Honi, 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 Honi Ha-M'aggel, once again, thank you so much for what you did for us. But we have another favor to ask of you. You see, since that time, the rain hasn't stopped. And the fields are actually starting to flood. And the people are starting to have to move and, live uphill. Can you please, ask God to stop the rain? And Honi said, haven't you people learned how to pray yet? Okay. And so he turned to Hashem, and he said, Hashem, my beloved, your children who you led out of Egypt do not know how and cannot take too much of a bad thing. But nor can they take too much of a good thing. Please, can you please end this abundant rain? And at that moment, the clouds started moving because the wind picked up and pushed the clouds to the side. And the sun came out once again. And that is the story of Honi Ha-M'aggel, Honi the Circle Maker, Honi, that great Jewish weather shaman. Thank you so much.